Every avoidant has 5 distinct levels, and you can tell what level yours is by the excuses that they give you when you try to get close. But in order to understand these levels, we first need to completely reframe the way that you look at attachment theory. Okay, so most people view attachment theory like this. They like to put each of the different attachment styles in different boxes. So you have the secure in one box, anxious in one box, dismissive avoidant, fearful avoidant, so on and so forth. The point of this is that once you're in the box, there's no getting out of the box. You either are a secure attachment, or you either are a dismissive avoidant, or an anxious attachment. But this is a dangerous way to think, because you start treating the box like the whole person. It's neat, it's simple, but it's also misleading. Because the truth is, real people don't actually fit that cleanly into boxes. And when you force them into a box, you'll end up misreading their behavior and missing what's really happening underneath. And to be honest, that's exactly why so many people tend to get blindsided by avoidance. The reality, though, is that attachment theory is a spectrum. This spectrum, in fact. And there are really 3 elements to this. You have the anxious side of the spectrum. You'll have the Goldilocks zone in the middle that is meant to be represented by the secure attachment. And then you have the avoidance side on the far right. You'll also may have noticed that there are levels throughout the spectrum. On the anxious side, you have 5 levels. On the avoidance side, you have 5 levels. And in the secure side, you actually have 3 levels going up and down depending on where you are in the circle. Now, if that's confusing, just bear with me here, because I promise we're going to make it super simple. All we really care about is this side of the spectrum for this particular discussion. And you may have noticed that on this side of the spectrum, there are these 5 specific levels, all kind of leading towards the dismissive avoidant entity. The way the spectrum is supposed to work is someone can either slide forwards or backwards up and down the spectrum. Of course, there's a lot more nuance to it than that, but you get kind of where we're going here. And the reality is that there are no 2 dismissive avoidants that are the same. And I'll give you an example. All right, so let's say you have 2 people and both are avoidant. One of them gets a little uncomfortable when things get too emotional. So for example, if their partner says, "Hey, can we talk about how we've been feeling lately?" They might get quiet and take some space, but eventually they circle back and engage. The other person will hear the same sentence and then just disappear. There will be no response. There will be no explanation. They're just gone. They have the same attachment label, avoidant, but one is just lightly guarded and the other treats intimacy like a burning building. So if you want to see that represented, we have those 2 different types of avoidance here. So in this example, we might have someone who is a level 1 avoidant, represented, as you can see here, by the white circle. And then you have the red circle. That is someone who is a level 5 avoidant, running away from the burning building. That is the spectrum. Okay, so we get the basics, but we obviously need to talk about the levels of avoidance. And I thought we'd do something fun to do it. I want to use animals to help describe each level. And we'll start first with level number 1. So the level 1 avoidant is going to be represented by the turtle. This avoidant is lightly guarded, but they aren't completely out yet. Think of a turtle. When it senses sudden movement, it doesn't sprint or disappear. It simply pulls back into its shell. That's what level 1 avoidants do with intimacy. If their partner says something like, "Hey, can we talk about how we've been feeling lately?" They're going to get quiet. Now, they may take some space, but here's the thing. After a short time, they poke their head back out. They circle back and engage in the conversation, and they'll often reassure their partner in some way. Now, one of the reasons that I think this occurs is because of how close to the Goldilocks zone it is. I didn't make a big deal about the Goldilocks zone when I was trying to explain this, but you'll notice that the dismissive avoidance spectrum is pretty close to that secure circle. You can be a secure attachment, but still slightly lean avoidantly. You can also be a secure attachment and slightly lean anxiously. Here's the rub though, as long as you're in the circle. So you'll notice level 1 here is very close to that circle. They're avoidant, but they're also almost borderline secure. So the turtle response for a level 1 is basically, look, I need a moment but I'm not gone. It's avoidance, but in miniature. Essentially, they're showing discomfort with too much emotional closeness, but they're not rejecting intimacy altogether. The danger here is subtle. Partners often misinterpret this as a major red flag when in reality, it's the mildest form of avoidant defense. A level 1 avoidant can still sustain a connection. They just need a little bit of breathing room. But there is one more rather interesting fact about level 1s. Turtles actually use their shells as protection, but they never abandon them. They always just carry their home with them. For level 1 avoidance, it's actually the same. Their instinct is to retreat into themselves when closeness feels risky, but they don't cut ties with the relationship. They don't run away permanently. They just retreat into their inner shell until they feel safe enough to come back out. That distinction matters because it shows their withdrawal isn't rejection, it's regulation. But we're going to move on up the spectrum and move our little avoidant circle up to level 2. Now, level 2 is going to be represented by the cat. Cats love attention, but only on their terms. They'll curl up in your lap 1 minute, then they'll scratch and dart off the next if you try to hold them for too long. That's exactly how level 2 avoidants handle intimacy. So, for example, if their partner says, hey, can we talk about how we've been feeling lately? They might lean in at first. They'll listen, maybe even share something personal. But that moment they feel pressure or too much vulnerability, they're going to pull away. Some of the most common level 2 excuses you're going to hear is, you're too intense. I just need space to think. I'm not ready for that conversation. You're making this a bigger deal than it is. I don't want to ruin the mood. Why can't we just enjoy things without overthinking? Essentially, that level 2 cat response is, I'll come close when I want, but if you chase me, I'm going to run. The danger here is inconsistency. A level 2 avoidant knows how to give just enough closeness to keep you hopeful and just enough warmth to make you believe progress is being made. But the moment things start to feel too real, they flip. One day they're affectionate, the next they're distant. This hot and cold cycle keeps their partner constantly guessing, constantly scanning for signs, and essentially walking on eggshells. Over time, that unpredictability doesn't just confuse you, it erodes trust. You never really know if you're about to get a purr or a scratch. My former ex made a confession the other day. Here is a part of it. I wasn't kidding when I said it sounded like a script Chris made up. The confession from the ex had everything you could possibly want in it. You look so beautiful, made me fall for you all over again. You're perfect, I need you in my life. But I think it's what the client said last that hit home for me. Confidence is key. Improve yourself and let yourself shine for the world to see. Now, I've been doing this for a long time. And so often when it comes to making an avoidant regret losing you, it's not about anything you say. It's about what you do, how you let go, how you put the focus on yourself, and how you finally stop chasing and start becoming the person they never thought they'd lose. Now, if you're ready to do just that on your terms, I just opened up my Seiter Super offer. It's 50% off access to everything I've ever created. You get access to our community, to the battle buddies, to live coaching calls with me, and a lot more. Now, if you're interested in this super offer, all you have to do is look in the description below and click the link you see there. All right, let's move on up our scale to the level 3 avoidant. Now, the level 3 avoidant is where things get really interesting. We're going to use a deer to represent the level 3. So if level 2 avoidants are inconsistent, level 3 are hypersensitive, like a deer in the woods. A deer can be grazing peacefully, but the tiniest snap of a twig sends it bolting into the trees. It doesn't matter if the sound was dangerous or not, the instinct is flight. That's how level 3 avoidants treat intimacy. So again, when their partner says, hey, can we talk about how we've been feeling lately? They don't just hesitate or deflect. They shut down almost instantly as if being asked is a threat. Some of the most common level 3 excuses you're going to see is, I don't think I'm ready for a serious relationship. I just don't see myself settling down right now. I need to focus on myself. This feels like too much pressure. You get the idea. Essentially, what the level 3 deer is saying is, the second I sense danger, I'm gone. The danger here, of course, is fragility. A level 3 avoidance tolerance for closeness is so thin that even normal relationship conversations can send them running. For their partner, that feels like walking through the woods at night. Every step risks spooking them. But Embedded with the level 3 concept is something that I like to call the meridian line. Okay, think of the meridian line as the point of no return. Up to this point, level 1 turtles and level 2 cats, well, those kind of avoidants still tend to circle back. They may pull away, but they kind of end up returning. They still have one foot in the relationship. I think that's due to the gravity factor. Okay, so here I pulled up the spectrum, and you could see I've kind of divided it into two. We have the secure Goldilocks zone, and we have sort of the dismissive avoidance side of the spectrum. Levels 1 and 2 on the spectrum are still relatively close to the Goldilocks zone, and the Goldilocks zone is sort of like a sun. Okay, so the sun has a gravity, so it pulls sort of planets towards it. Same principle applies here to our spectrum. The level 1 turtles, the level 2 cats, they are still instinctively getting drawn to that secure Goldilocks zone. But level 3 is different. Once an avoidant crosses the threshold, once they cross that meridian line, it's like the point of no return. Their excuses stop being about taking space and start being about why the relationship itself can't work. It's no longer, I just need a breather. It becomes, I don't think I can do this at all. One more thing to mention here. Once an avoidant does cross that meridian line and enters into level 4 and 5 territory, they rarely cross back over to levels 3, 2, and 1. It becomes almost like this little hurdle. So essentially, level 4 and 5 aren't these temporary defenses anymore. They're the exits. So when they hit these stages, they're not just avoiding closeness, they're actively closing the door on the relationship. Think of it like standing on a cliff. On one side, they may retreat into the woods, but eventually return to graze. But on the other side, once they leap, they don't come back to the same field. And I think that leads us rather nicely as we move up the spectrum past the meridian line to level 4. Level 4, I'm going to label as the porcupine level. So if level 3 avoidants flee at the first sign of intimacy, level 4 avoidants take it further. They defend their distance with spikes. Now we see the porcupine. And if you think of a porcupine, it doesn't just run when it's threatened, it bristles. Get too close and you're going to get hurt. That's what a level 4 avoidant does when intimacy begins to feel very, very overwhelming. So let's use our standard, hey, can we talk about how we've been feeling lately example. If you ask that, a level 4 avoidant doesn't just withdraw, they're going to lash out. And their withdrawal comes with barbs that are designed to push you away harder. Some of the excuses to expect: you're way too needy. This relationship is suffocating me. Why can't you just be happy with the way things are? You're always starting drama. I can't give you what you want. Stop asking. You'll also notice my tone as I started saying those things got a little bit angry. Well, that's the porcupine spikes. I don't know what to say. The porcupine motto, if you will, is not only am I going to keep you out, but I'm going to make it sting if you try to get closer. The danger here with porcupines is, quite frankly, hostility. At this level, an avoidant isn't just protecting themselves, they're actively rewriting the story so you become the problem. And once they've armed themselves with that narrative, it's almost impossible to reach them without taking damage yourself. Let's take Ernest Hemingway. Weird analogy, but bear with me here. On the surface, he's this really magnetic and charming and adventurous and larger-than-life guy. People fell in love with the image of him very easily. But behind the scenes, his relationships often followed the same avoidant script. When partners wanted deeper emotional intimacy, Hemingway doesn't just retreat, he lashes out like our porcupine. There's these really famous letters that were written by Hemingway himself and after his death were intercepted. And if you read them, you get kind of a really interesting insight into him. You know, he has this tendency that if someone gets too close, he literally accused them of being needy or trying to trap him. He'd rewrite the story so they became the problem. Suffocating, dramatic, impossible to please. He would essentially just justify pushing all the romantic interests in his life away. And yet, just like a porcupine, he didn't run entirely. He kept them close enough to feed his ego and his need for connection, but spiky enough to keep real intimacy out. It's the classic level 4 pattern, distance wrapped in hostility. And I would argue that one of the biggest differences between level 4 and level 5 is the fact that level 4, there's still a shred of hope of them coming back. And with that in mind, let's move our spectrum up to level 5. I did this post for TikTok and Instagram a few days ago where I talked about the whole concept I'm talking about in this video. And what's really funny about that is a lot of people commented, my ex or my avoidant was a level 4 or level 5. And by far, the most common number people would throw out there was a level 5 avoidant. I have a level 5 avoidant. The reality is, though, they don't know what they were talking about. Level 5 avoidants are the avoidant incarnate. They're kind of rare. It's a lot more likely that there's a misclassification going on where they think they have a level 5, but the reality is they have a level 4. We're going to use an owl to describe level 5. This is, of course, like I just said, the avoidant incarnate. At this stage, there are no excuses. There are no half-hearted reasons. There are no, I just need space. They're just gone. A level 5 avoidant will vanish without warning. They'll ghost, they'll block, they'll disappear as if you never existed. Vulnerability doesn't just make them uncomfortable. It feels unbearable, like standing in a burning building. So they escape in the only way they know how, by erasing the connection completely. Why an owl, though? Well, I liked owls because I felt like they were silent. I felt that they were nocturnal hunters. You don't hear them coming, and then the second you notice, they're already gone. That's how a level 5 avoidant moves through a relationship. There's no explanation, no closure, just silence. It's very abrupt. The motto here is, you'll never catch me because I'm already gone. And here's the brutal part. They rarely circle back. Once someone has reached this level of avoidance, they treat closure itself as a threat. Silence is their only shield. But there's an element to this whole spectrum that I haven't really talked about yet. If you remember at the very beginning of this video, I made this analogy how people with attachment theory tend to put people in different boxes. Well, unfortunately, the same thing is going to happen here with these levels. You know, there will be the box for the level 1 avoidance, the box for the level 5 avoidance. You get what I'm saying. But the thing is, avoidants don't just start at level 5. There is no level 5 box. They have to slide and work up to it. So a lot of times what will happen when you get into a relationship with an avoidant is they'll be at level 1 or level 2. And then as they're in the relationship, experiencing it, things will happen that will slowly push them up the spectrum. They'll move from level 1 to level 2, all the way up to level 3. Now, have you ever heard the phrase crossing the Rubicon? In 49 BC, Julius Caesar stands with his army on the banks of the Rubicon River. Now, by Roman law, generals were forbidden to march their troops across it because crossing meant civil war. So Caesar knows that once he steps across the Rubicon, there is no turning back. And yet he did it anyway. And that one choice sets history in motion. If you do want to put avoidance in boxes when it comes to these levels, this, or at least what I'm about to say, is the one exception. If avoidants get pushed far enough, they experience a crossing the Rubicon moment. It's that moment when they stop pulling back for air and start rewriting the entire relationship as unsalvageable. Their excuses shift from I just need space to I can't do this at all. And that moment happens when they cross the meridian line. They've crossed their Rubicon and moved on to level 4 and 5. Interestingly though, once they've made that choice, it becomes incredibly hard for them to return back to level 3, 2, or 1. Notice I didn't say impossible though. Because crossing back over the Rubicon isn't just about reaching out again. It's about walking against every instinct their nervous system has built since childhood. It's swimming upstream against years of conditioning that taught them closeness equals danger. I want you to imagine it from their perspective for a bit. On one side of the river is safety and independence, the story they've always told themselves. On the other side is uncertainty, risk, and exposure. To come back means not only admitting that they ran, but also facing the very intimacy they once labeled as unbearable. That's why so few ever attempt it. And those who do, it isn't quick, it isn't clean, it's slow, it's painful, it's a journey of unlearning defenses that they thought were permanent. So yes, it can happen, but it's a Rubicon for a reason. Because once you've crossed it, every step back feels like a battle with yourself.